Hi everyone, my name is Reza, and in this video, I'm trying to demo the Artintech Calibration Module. So with no further ado, let's get started.
So as you know, calibration is one of the most important modules within the quality management system. And so, as you know, in the production and manufacturing industries, so we need to make sure all the measurement tools that we have in the company, regardless of being owned by the company or this is a measurement tools belong to the operator or technician, so has to be managed. And so each of these tools has to have the unique number. And so we need to keep a record of the calibration. So we need to just make sure based on the internal requirement and procedure that we have it in place. So the accuracy of those measurement tools meet our internal requirement and is accurate enough to just make sure the product that we make would be within the customer drawing limits. So as you see it here, so we have a dashboard. So this is the list of all modules we have in the Artintech ERP system for the quality management. So the calibration module, so as you see it here, so I'm just going to click on that. So under the calibration, so as you see, so we have two different categories, which one of them is gauge type and another one is gauge list, which I'm going to introduce them one by one. So the gauge type, so what gauge type means, so inside the company, so definitely we have different measurement tools. We have different sort of calipers with different sizes. The accuracy and the resolution are different. So we have different sort of micrometer, for example, and any other measurement tools. So when we say gauge type, we are going to make a unique record or identification for any of gauges we have in the company. For example, so caliper 0.8 inch. So as you see it here, so there is a caliper 0 to 8 inch, which the range of measurement is 0 to 8 inch, and the resolution for that one is 1/10. So we might have 10 of these caliper in this size and these resolution inside the uh, company. But so we could actually make one identification for this type of gauge, for these type of sizes and resolution. So, and I'm just going to let you know what's the benefit of that one. So the reason that we are going to do that, so later on when it comes to the gauge list and we want to make identification or separate page for any of unique gauges that we have for any unique caliper 0 to 8 inch, in this case with the resolution 1/10 we have. So we could call for this template we already made and just make it easier for the calibration, especially when we wanted to record the measurement of those tools when it comes to the comparison with the references we have in place. So I'm just going to go through one example. I'm just going to make one gauge type here. So to do that, so you need to click on new. So when it comes, so you need to define the gauge type. So in this case, I'm just going to go micrometer, and the uh, I'm going to say this is 0 to 1 inch, for example. Measurement range, as we said, is going to be 0 to 1 inches. The resolution of that one, let's say this one also is going to be 1/10, and the unit for measurement is inch. So if you have any kinds of calibration instruction inside the company to do calibration for these type of gauges, for example, for the micrometer 0 to 1 inch, if you have any kinds of instructions, so you could just copy and paste it here. So those requirements, attachment box. So in case if you have any kinds of catalog, anything that you wanted to attach under this gauge. So you could do that. If you have any kinds of standard which you already put and you have those, let's say a standard inside the software, for example, the work instruction for calibration. You have general kinds of specification, work instruction for calibration of the measurement tools that you have in place. So you could just call it through here and you could link it. So out of all those documents that you have it in place and you have it in the software already, you could just select and just link it to this one. So the parameter, and this is the good thing actually about the system that we designed it. So as I said, so when you are going to calibrate any tools that you have in the company, so you need to basically use different references. Let's say for the micrometer, you might have different kinds of gauge blocks, standard gauge blocks in place, and you are going to measure with this micrometer and just compared to see how much is off from the standard reference, and if that much deviation is within your requirement or your allowance, so definitely it could be passed, otherwise it is going to be rejected. So for these parameters, just make sure later on, so when you need it, you don't need all the time just put kinds of different sizes here and just do it over and over again. So once when we actually define the gauge stop, which is in this case micrometer 0 to 1 inch, so you define it once, and later on, whenever so you have this sort of gauge with this resolution, within the calibration, you could use that template as you save it here. So name. So I'm just going to say uh, size 1, for example, the measuring size, let's say 0. So I'm just going to check, to see if the 0 is okay or no. So the tolerance, acceptable tolerance, based on your requirements, is going to be 1/10, and the unit for sure is inch again. Save it. So another size that you wanted to check, let's say, is size 2. Measurement size is, let's say, 0.2. And the tolerance also is going to be 1/10 plus minus. And another one I'm going to check, we call it size 3. Let's say it's going to be 1 inch. And again, the acceptable tolerance for that one would be plus minus 1/10. So when we make this one, so let's say based on my internal requirements, so whenever I'm just going to check the micrometer 0 to 1 inch, I need to check or compare on different 3 sizes to just make sure that micrometer, measure it correctly. So when I did it this one, so you need to activate this gauge type and save it. When you save it, so if I just come back to the gauge type, so you're going to see this one as a new gauge type that you defined it. So our work with this one finish here for the gauge types. And so the next step would be to assign it any of these micrometer if we have it for the same size, for the same resolution to anyone inside the company. So I go to the gauge list. Now let's say so you have 2, 3 different micrometer 0 to 1 each with the same resolution as you define it in the gauge type, and so you wanted to assign it to different people inside the company. So I'm just going to click here. So if I go back again to the grid for the gauges, so as you see it here, so we have different tools we already put inside this one. We have the gauge number. This is the unique number that you are going to assign it whenever you want to add any tools here. So let's say I'm just going to come here. Out of all the gauge types that I have, which I already put it inside the software. So this is the micrometer 0 to 1. I'm going to select, and this one was 1/10. So who created, so the name is coming by default here. the gauge number. So this is the one that you are going to assign. So if you select, any kinds of repetitive number, so the software is going to alarm you and it cannot accept that. So the manufacturer of that one, so if you have the manufacturer of that micrometer, for example, so you could put it here. So in this case, I'm just going to say test. Gauge model, if you have it, gauge serial number, if you have it. When you see, there is a star, right beside any of these field here, so it means those information is mandatory. If it's not, so it means you could just leave it as is, or if you have it, you could put it. It depends if those information is available. So location, so definitely you could select, the company that you have it. So in this case, I just, select the company that we already put here. But sometimes, for example, there is different plant, under one organization. And so in that case, you could select, any of those plants if this gauge is going to be used there. So who's going to use this one? So within the employee list, so if anyone is there, so you could just select that person. The calibration interval, so this one basically is how often you are going to check this one. So let's say based on my internal procedure, each 6 months, I'm going to check these tools again. And so the number, I'm going to put it there based on what you see it here, it would be based on days. So the next calibration date, so you cannot put anything because, we haven't done any kinds of calibration. Just now we are going to make kinds of, assign a number to these tools and, and give it to somebody through the company. Department, so if we know this person working in any of departments that we have, so we could select it. If you wanted to be more specific, so if, under quality, for example, so we know this person working the inspection, so you could select it. So this one is used as a reference. So basically for some of the measurement tools that we could use them. So those are standard gauges. Let's say, we have it in the company and we are going to use them as a reference to check the other tools based on these one and see if, those tools are accurate enough. So you could just check this one. And so later on, when it comes to the calibration, so you could select out of all the use as reference tools that you already have it and select those, and you could just say, okay, so I use this one as a reference to calibrate these tools. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. Calibration history. So basically, this one is going to record all the calibration. So let's say in this case, each 6 months we are going to calibrate, and so it's going to show the history of that one here. If there is any note, you could put it. Otherwise, so you could just say save it, and when you save it, it's done. So if I go back to the gauge list, so this is the one we actually we made it now. The gauge number is 7. It shows, where's the location, which department, which operation, who's using that one is active. But you see, there is no calibration here. Why? Because, we haven't done any sort of calibration for this tool. To do that one, so if I just come back to the page, belong to that tools. So all the information is here. When we save this one and all the information is there, so there is a kinds of button here will pop up. And so this is what actually we are going to click to just make any new calibration for that. So let's say I'm just going to go through that one. So click on this one. It just send me to another page. The calibration number is the unique number for each calibration history that you are going to make. So to do that one, you need to save the page, which this rule is applicable for all the modules that we have within this software. So wherever it asks, for the calibration number, for any kinds of number, for any form, module reports that has to have a unique number assigned to that one. So you need to save first to get that number. So as you saw it here, so I just save and just gave this one. So the information, some of the information, as you see, is grayed out. So because it's coming from the previous page, which is the same information when you register these tools. Calibration date. So if it's today, so you could just keep it as it is, or if let's say 2-3 days ago, you did it this month, so you could just pick, the date from here, and now is the time you wanted to record, those results. So I will come. So if you are working in the calibration office, sometimes, some calibration departments, so when they do the calibration, they need to record the temperature and humidity by the time that they do the calibration. So you could just record it here, and humidity, let's say, is 35 percent, and calibration type. So is internal or external? So you know that, sometimes there is a calibration office inside the company, and so there is some people which actually going after the tools and they do the calibration. So is internal. So if you send those tools outside of the company to a vendor, for example, to calibrate them, so you could select the external. If you select the external, so definitely you need to provide the calibration company that you send it out, the vendor that you send the tools for calibration. And so definitely when they do the calibration and send it back to your company, so they provide kinds of certificate number that you could record it here. So, but in this case, let's say is internal and who did the calibration. So I'm just going to select the name of the calibrator, approved by. There is no kinds of limitation here, but just for in the case that we wanted to just show if there is anybody inside the calibration office, for example, sometimes, more than one person working. And so there is somebody else that has to approve, those calibration, that you could record it over there. So gauge reference for calibration. So if you remember, I said that some tools that you select as a reference by the time that you create them. And so this is where actually you could select out of those gauge standard, which in this case, I don't have anything here. I didn't put any reference here. But if you had it, you could see, that gauge also under this one. And so you could select it later on. So definitely when you print out the report, you could see, that one is a gauge reference. Calibration instruction, so you didn't put anything, but if you have it, you could just, also paste it here. So if you remember, by the time we made the gauge type for the micrometer 0 to 1, 1/10 resolution, so we made this parameter, and this is the time that I said it's just going to make it easier for us if we wanted to do the calibration. If we didn't have this one, so definitely, again, you need to click on new, put all the information parameter again, and this has to be done, over and over again, which is so frustrating. But now you have the template. So if you're using this one, so you could, by the time that you check, the tools with the reference that you have, you could record, see, how much it's showing. If, is within that tolerance, so it's just going to show pass. If it's not, so it's just going to show, let's say here, I'm just going to put 2. So it's just going to show is fail. But in this case, as I just wanted to show how when it passed, you could actually finish the calibration for that one. So there is a comment here, mandatory. So if calibration attachment here, you see this box. So whenever, as I said, you send it outside for the calibration, they send you a certificate also, and you wanted to record that certificate inside your system. So here is the time that you could attach that calibration certificate provided by the vendor, and also record the certificate number by them and the calibration company that you use for this one, and save and record the result. So comments, I'm just going to say okay, and so calibration decision. This is the last one that you need to will actually say based on what you see it here. This one's going to be passed or not. So if it's passed, so all the information you put it there, you are going to save it, and if everything is fine, so you can submit that. So by the time that you submit, so if it just sends you through the gauge detail list, and so it shows the new calibration history that you provided based on the date and based on the calibration interval you put it. It's just going to show you the next calibration date. From here, we provide this feature which you could go through the results and print it from here, or from the page we are right now here. So you could PDF the report if somebody asked for. So I download it. So the information that we put it is here. And so you could just print out if, for example, if somebody asked for that. So we finished with this one. So if I go back to the grade, so what you're going to see, this is the tools that we made it now. And so we're just going to show when it was calibrated and when is, the last or the next due date for the calibration. So for sure, so later on, you could use different filters that we have it here and sort, or in advance, you want to provide a list of tools that need to be calibrated within this month, or you need to send it out. So this is overall the features that we provided for calibration module for the Artintech ERP software.